Hello and welcome to the Ask Atticus podcast. I'm Leon Cook. I'm co-founder partner from Atticus Partners and joined today by former special advisor extraordinaire and Talk TV host and senior counsel to Atticus Partners, Peter Cardwell. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Leon. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're both in the Hyatt Hotel inside the secure zone here in Birmingham at Conservative Party conference. For the annual Conservative Convention. It's been an interesting event. I've been coming to these for 15 years. I have to say this one is slightly more of a bit of a damp squib than last. Peter, what are your overarching thoughts of what you've seen over the last couple of days, and certainly related to what the Prime Minister and Chancellor have both done and then undone in the space of the last 24 hours?
It's definitely a very different atmosphere to any political conference I've ever been at, whether that's Lib Dem, Labour or Conservative. Certainly last week in Liverpool, I think the Labour were very, very quietly sort of confident in terms of what might happen in the next 2 years. But I think for Liz Truss, things have, sadly for her, gone from bad to worse in regard to rocking up at this conference, knowing that the 45p tax rate was a big problem, then a U-turn on that, then a couple of other U-turns, one on the next fiscal event and when that's going to be, and the date of that has now changed twice. So I think there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of worry as well. Liz Truss, of course, has a lot of supporters. It was only 4 weeks ago, remember, that she was voted in as leader of the Conservative Party, and there are a lot of people here who want her to succeed. The question is whether the party faithful will actually turn out tomorrow, because it's interesting, not just with the train strike, but a lot of people are leaving tonight as well. So I think that could really be the damp squib of this conference tomorrow, as well as the fact that Liz Truss has a bit of a mountain to climb in terms of perhaps not convincing everyone here, because a lot of them are convinced already, but nonetheless speaking to the public, speaking to the nation at home, listening and getting our message across and trying to convince them that she has hope and optimism and indeed competence to offer.
I mean, I think that's interesting. Some creative shot making from the TV, I think, tomorrow in terms of how many people are actually in the hall. I think an element of the train strike comes into that, but equally the mood here at this conference, I would say, is a little bit, I mean, I wouldn't say it's quite 1996, but people seem very, very flat in terms of, both the party faithful and politicians look at polls. They see 33 points and they may be thinking to themselves, how on earth are we going to oversell that and bring that back? I mean, Peter, I would say, what if you were advising Liz Truss today or over the next period, what would you say that she needs to do? And is there a way back for her and the Chancellor to basically give confidence primarily to the parliamentary party about that they can come together and do this?
I think it's you really only lose the confidence of the parliamentary party once, if it was there to begin with. We've got to remember that Liz Truss never had a majority of the parliamentary party voting for her. It was always Rishi Sunak who was out in front. So there would be a mountain to climb really anyway in regard to this. But in terms of getting confidence back, not just in the party, but also the markets as well, I think Kwasi Kwarteng's speech on Monday was really a very, very muted affair, muted applause, muted at the start and in the end, and not very much laughter or good reaction. I think Liz Truss needs to be really bold tomorrow. In a sense, she hasn't got a huge amount to lose, because at 25 points in the polls to Labour's 50, depending which poll you look at, or even worse than that in the YouGov poll earlier of 33 points, there's really nowhere left. I mean, she could go lower, I suppose. Let's hope not for her sake. But certainly if she wants to be bold, be radical, and to try to G people up, that's something that she should just go for it tomorrow. And I think that if there is a big offer, if there's something really attractive, I think of on something like immigration, for example, where they can really solve the problem, or alternatively just take bold and decisive action, well, that's something that could re-energize the base. But so much damage has been done to her brand and to Kwasi Kwarteng's brand in the last 10 or 15 days that I think it's probably very difficult to come back with. One long-serving political observer, a columnist with a national newspaper I was talking to just before I came up the stairs actually, was saying that he just thinks she'll be gone by the time of the May local elections. It's quite difficult to remove a Conservative leader, but she has got a mountain to climb, and I think it's going to be very, very difficult, not just tomorrow, but in the coming days as well.
Obviously, that I was literally just about to ask you that, Peter. Obviously, it will require an amendment to the rules of the 1922 committee that a newly elected or appointed leader and prime minister sits there for a year. But do you think there is a construct whereby, you just said it yourself, by the local elections of May next year, where there is a confidence motion in her and that she falls? And in the event that that happens, is there any conceivable way where a general election doesn't get called? Because I think that the mood in the country may move so greatly against the Conservatives that they think, well, how is it that we've got our fourth prime minister in nearly so many years? What would you say would probably happen there?
Well, that all makes complete sense about a general election. I think it would take a lot for the public to stomach a new Conservative leader who didn't have a sort of personal mandate in the way that Boris Johnson did. Although Liz Truss makes the argument, others may make the argument that you vote for a Conservative government rather than a single prime minister. But certainly, where there's a will, there's a way, and I think that there are ways of allowing a prime minister to know that they are not popular and don't have confidence without a formal 1922 committee vote. This is all very, very worrying stuff for Liz Truss, given that she's been in power for just about a month. And actually, if you take out the Queen's mourning period and the weekends, you're really looking at something like 12 or 13 working days that she has been prime minister. So it's for it to be so short and for the backlash to be so great is not something I've seen in politics happening as quickly. I've certainly seen times when things have been really bad for certain leaders, but at the same time, it's usually taken place over a longer period. And I think that just as quickly as things have gone badly for Liz Truss, just as quickly she could be removed. The question is, who is the uniting character? Who is the person who can bring a very, very divided party together? And I'm not sure that person actually exists. So I think it's a case of be careful what you wish for the Conservative Party.
I think that's probably right. And from all the conversations I've had with people at the conference, and including those on the payroll, paid up ministers of the Crown, that people are privately being super candid in terms of what they think is going to happen, and best case scenario, and being quite pragmatic, that if it was a hung parliament or a minority Labour government, they would probably take that. There is an absolute fear of it could be at least 100 seats, if not more. And that means probably at least one electoral parliamentary cycle, if not at least maybe two in the wilderness. And that, politics is cyclical. You can't go on forever. So there's an element of maybe it's just time for a change and we sit this one out. I think that the one other major question I would ask you is that what do you think her priorities, apart from growth, which we've heard about in the run up to the conference and here at the conference in Birmingham, for the big policy questions? What happens with Northern Ireland? What happens with Brexit? What happens with trade deals? Is there bandwidth to concentrate on these things, or is it all about local economy, tax and jobs?
I think it's probably actually all of those things, and that's the problem when you're a prime minister who is not in command of events, that the events kind of lead you, and the stuff you're trying to do, especially on planning policy, is going to be very, very difficult. And actually, this was meant to be the easy bit. Okay, it was a very controversial policy in terms of a tax cut from 45p to 40p, but that was meant to be the easy bit. And if you can't get a Conservative majority government of 72, 73 majority to vote through a tax cut, how on earth are you going to get them to come with you on welfare reform, on Brexit, on many of the issues that you bring up there, Leon? So this is going to be very, very difficult, whatever the Prime Minister does, but there are lots of battles ahead, especially within that growth agenda. I think that is obviously the priority, but within that there are things like reforming the planning system, which is just so difficult, and so many governments have tried it before. And at the end of the day, the ideological view, for example, of Liz Truss's people in terms of let's just build loads of houses, that's fine in concept. But when it comes to actual delivery and planning and houses and stress on things like roads and people's views and so on, well, that's something very, very different, especially when you get down to the council level. So I think there are all sorts of problems for any prime minister at any stage, always, but particularly at the moment, particularly after 12 years, particularly for an administration which is trying to divorce itself from the last 12 years of Conservative government, which rightly or wrongly have actually been fairly successful in many different ways. So it's very, very interesting, a hugely interesting political conference for a political journalist, let me tell you, but not so good for the political party members, the Conservative faithful, and how faithful they will be tomorrow when Liz Truss speaks, I think remains to be seen.
I mean, so any Conservative faithful and the Blue Brigade listening to this might think this is incredibly defeatist or negative, but I would say it's a pretty pragmatic and realist understanding of what's being spoken about here at conference. To try and lighten the mood just slightly, if there was one person or moment that has actually been positive, is there anything specific that speaks to you or springs out?
I think there have been a few moments of levity, definitely. One was when I was talking to a cabinet minister, it would be wrong to say who it was, yesterday, who said, "Peter, we're getting the barnacles off the boat. The problem is that we superglued those barnacles on in the first place, but we're getting them off the boat, and that's the main."
Well, I think that's a very nice analogy. Mine would probably be Kemi Badenoch, who I think impresses many, many people. Every time they see her speak, they definitely see someone that has a very, very long future within the party and maybe at the absolute top of that tree. And one last parting question, and then we'll wrap it up. If there was someone ambitious enough, some might say crazy enough, to take on the mantle in the event that there is a change at the top, who do you think that would be? Who would come forward?
Oh my goodness. I think this is a leadership election. There'd be loads of different people going for it. Everybody wants to be leader of the Conservative Party. Certainly, I would imagine Rishi Sunak would re-emerge. I think Penny Mordaunt would give it another go. But there'll be new people too. Kemi Badenoch, as you say, is a very, very popular person. But in terms of someone who can unite the Conservative Party, I think that's beyond the wit of any man or woman at the moment. And whoever takes that on would have a big job on their hands.
Well, there you go, folks. That's a wrap. That's our take of what we're seeing and hearing here in Birmingham. If you want to hear any more or get our thoughts on what this means for either your organisation, your policy area, please get in touch. But it's been a very interesting few days here in Birmingham, and one more evening to go. So any further conversations we'll follow up with, and then we'll see what the Prime Minister has to say to the party faithful tomorrow. So with that, thank you, Peter. Thank you for joining us, and for those listening, thanks so much.
Thank you.